The 39-odd chieftains in medieval Iceland had great responsibility towards their followers. Every time a free-born man suffered wrong, he depended on his chieftain to set things straight. As a country with no executive power, Iceland had neither a police force nor official prosecutors, so the individual himself was responsible for the upkeep of justice. For this reason, most common people were highly dependent on their chieftains for protection. Arbitration took place at the district assembly closest to the scene of the crime, given that both parties involved were attending the same assembly. In those instances where each party belonged to a different quarter, the court case was appealed to Althing, the central assembly of the country as a whole. We are fortunate enough to know which district assembly was established first. It was called Kjalarnesþing, located a few kilometers north of what is now the city of Reykjavik, Iceland's capital. Kjalarnesþing was founded at the start of the 10th century, and some scholars have seen it as a direct precursor of the Althing. The other local assembly we know for sure to have been established before the Althing is Þórsnesþing, the one described so thoroughly in the first chapters of Eyrbyggja saga. Snorri Goði, the saga's protagonist, is one of 3 chieftains involved in this assembly, and as we can assume from the account of his progression, he inherits his chieftaincy. Acquisition of chieftaincies by inheritance was customary in medieval Iceland. Snorri is the great-grandson of the region's first chieftain, so he has an undisputed claim to the title. In the west quarter, Þverárþing and Þorskafjarðarþing are added later. In the south quarter, we find Rangárþing, which would have been the local assembly of Gunnar and Njáll in Njál's saga, even if it is nowhere mentioned in the saga. By comparing Eyrbyggja saga and Njál's saga, we discover that chieftains play a big role in some of the sagas, but not in others. Gunnar and Njáll are the most influential big shots in their region, but neither of the two is a chieftain, and those chieftains that hold office in the area play only an insignificant role in the saga. In the south quarter, we also find Árnesþing. In the north, there is Húnavarsþing, the assembly to which Grettir and his family belong. We get the information early in the saga that Ásmund, Grettir's father, is a client of the local chieftain, and accordingly, he has the duty to accompany him to the assembly, both the local one and the Althing, and pledge his support. One time, when the chieftain turns up at Ásmund's farm and asks him to join his convoy to the Althing next summer, Ásmund prefers to stay home because he is starting to have trouble moving about. Instead, they decide that Grettir should go as his substitute, since he is clever enough to handle his father's legal duties. In some sense, being a chieftain's follower is simply serving a function that can be filled by someone else. In the north, we also find Hegranesþing, Vaðlaþing, and Þingeyjarþing. The east quarter is more problematic than the others, and the organization of assemblies there is subject to serious doubts. There were assemblies called Krakalækjarþing, Múlaþing, and Skaftafellsþing, but this is only one of several possibilities. This adds up to 13 assemblies in all, so the big picture is complete. However, the whole thing must be taken with a grain of salt. We have evidence of even more assemblies that seem to have existed only for short durations. Sometimes one assembly substitutes another when the old assembly site is no longer serviceable for some reason, just like happens in Eyrbyggja saga. The number 13 comes from the Grey Goose laws, the written law collection, and we must keep in mind that it wasn't until the early 12th century that law was recorded in writing for the first time. The reality of the 10th century may have been more complicated. All 13 assemblies relate in manifold ways to the Althing, which was positioned on Þingvellir in the southwest. To expand a little bit, the local assemblies are also called spring assemblies, since they were held in May, and procedures took 4 to 7 days. The Althing, however, started at the end of June, so unsolved cases from the spring assemblies could be re-argued there. The chieftains traveled with their followers from all parts of the country and convened for their lawmaking and arbitrating for 2 weeks during the summer.